Just before we move into the second half proper, I left this slide in. This was a hangover from the first time that I gave this talk to my work colleagues, as I was telling you at the start. And it was my attempt at dispelling some of the common myths and misconceptions about what's involved in martial arts. So, you know, I don't go around waxing cars or painting fences in my spare time to learn how to laugh. I don't go around dressed in a black leather ninja. I certainly can't levitate or do a spinning kick in the air. In fact, I've never, even in my youth, I was never able to do the spinning kick. I could kick head high, but I can't do that now. And yes, I can feel the pain, and I do bleed. Certainly, I can't, you know, this idea of developing this, oh, I can sense when people are behind me, that's pretty much a load of nonsense. My hands are not registered as deadly weapons. That's an urban myth that just got some traction, like, you know, back in the sort of, you know, early days of martial arts when the first Japanese instructors came over to the West. Fortunately, I've never had to use my karate skills in a real fight. I've come close to it a couple of times, but never had to use them in training. And I've certainly never shouted, hi-ya. There is, as you saw earlier, there is quite a bit of shouting involved in karate, but it's not hi-ya. I've never broken a brick with my hands. I've broken a wooden board, but not bricks, and I've certainly never stood like that. This is Hollywood martial arts, so anyway. Right, so let's move into part 3. So this is where we move from martial arts more into the realm of self-protection. So, 3 pillars of self-protection: awareness, de-escalation, and then finally physical skills. And that is the order in which you apply them, okay? If Jack was to just walk up to me, mind his own business, and just I smack him, and he falls to the ground, and I stand over and go, I told you to back off, buddy! That clearly doesn't make any sense. That is the behaviour of a psychopath. Right, okay? So, violence is always, always, always the last resort. Okay? So what do we mean by awareness? So, best form of self-protection is never to find yourself in a situation where you have to protect yourself. In short, okay? This is all the stuff that your mum used to tell you about, you know, don't get lift with strangers, don't go to the dodgy areas of town, don't go to bars and clubs that are known trouble spots, make sure your friends know where you are, you know, avoid dark alleys. It's all that kind of stuff, you know. You would like to think it's common sense, but it's amazing how short, in such short supply, common sense is these days. Okay. It's being aware of your environment. So, as I said earlier, in the first part, unlikely though it would be, if something was to kick off in here, there's all of a sudden all kinds of other things I've got to take into account that I don't have to worry about when I'm in the dojo training with Jack and my fellow students. I need to be aware of escape routes, obstacles, innocent bystanders. I might have people with me, friends, family members, protecting. Potential threats. So, as I look around this room, probably the person I would be most afraid of tackling, apart from him, is probably Ron, sitting there. But that's just based on his size, because he's quite tall, and he's probably weighs a bit more than me. How much do you weigh, Ron? Do you know roughly?
92 kilograms.
92. So 80 something. So you've got a few kilos on me. Okay.
In reality, it's your wife you've got
That's an entirely different situation. But, right, let me tell you, humans have coexisted for about 200,000 years. And over that time, our brains have become very adept at spotting subtle cues and changes in people's behaviour that we are not aware of at conscious level. Has anyone in this room ever been in a situation, you've been, I don't know, been invited to a dinner party or been out with a group of friends and you're introduced to someone and there's just something about them you don't like, yeah. They just give off some kind of vibe, You can't put your finger on it, but yeah, something about that person makes you uncomfortable. Trust those instincts. That's your brain saying, watch out for this person. Okay. Escape route. So, I know that there's an exit behind me. I know that there's another one behind the kitchen through the meeting room there. If for whatever reason those are unavailable to me, I could use a chair to break a window and go out there. That would be obviously a last resort, because after, you know, I could endanger myself, get cut with glass, what have you. Okay. Now, de-escalation strategies, both physical and verbal. So, as I said before, in a typical conflict situation, there's normally some escalation phase. There's normally a bit of shouting, right? You know, there's normally some, you know. Now, if Jack is at that distance from me, I don't care if he's calling me all the names under the sun, because at that distance he poses no threat. If he makes a lunge towards me, I can just turn around and run. The distance I need to worry about is here, right? Because if I can touch him, he can touch me, or at least he can lunge forward and grab me, okay? So, at this kind of distance, what I would do is I would adopt a fairly upright posture. I would try and appear confident, but not, all right, you and whose army then? Yeah? Because that just tends to inflame things, right? Okay, you know, it's like, yeah, all right then, big man, right? What have you? Let's see what you got, right?
Yeah.
All that this does is this just increases the tension levels. Most self-protection, self-defense people recommend adopting a fairly neutral-looking posture, which would look something like this: open hands, so he can see that I haven't got any weapons, right? Okay, but if he comes close, I can quickly do that. Keep your distance, buddy. Don't come any closer. Back off, right? And it's, I'm not pushing him. I'm not doing that. It's that kind of thing, right? I saw why you're right. Right. From here, if need be, I can do this. Yeah? All right. If he gets very close, I can create what's called a frame between me and him. He might be throwing shots, right? But you know, he's not going to get in close enough to start to use his knees or whatever. I can get some shots in down here, that kind of stuff, right? But my goal here is to try and create some distance between me and him so that I can then find a way to do my stuff against him. Okay?
One thing, if you don't mind me adding to this, is I usually call this like boundary setting, like physical boundary setting, and there is an escalation to this too. And I'm sure every single one of you in here have had to use some form of this in the past. And I'm not sure if funny, it's always at the pub. And it's always with somebody that's just getting a bit friendly. Okay, hey mate, how you doing? And they're getting too close. And I'm sure you end up having to do stuff like, hey, you know, mate, come on, take a seat. And even that is exactly the same principle. The only difference is I'm just not being as firm. It's softer. But there's all of it feeds into the same principle.
Verbal de-escalation is using language that is empathise with the other person's situation. So I don't know, if, for example, we're in a pub, I bump into his table, knock over his drink, spills on his trousers, he's a bit upset, I'm like, yeah mate, yeah, I'm sorry, it was my fault, look, I can pay for your dry cleaning or I can get you another drink. What would you like me to do? Now, in that situation, I've acknowledged that I'm at fault, but I haven't gone, yeah, well, it was your fault because you shouldn't have been, you know, doing this, this and this, or whatever. You know, I'm not trying to antagonize him. Also, by asking an open-ended question that requires a choice. So I'm not like saying, do you want me to get you another drink? No, I don't want another drink because I'm going to smash your face in, right? I've offered him a choice, and what that does is that engages a different part of the brain, because he's got to think, oh, do I want my trousers to be dry cleaned, or do I want another drink? And it requires a response that's not just yes or no.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Okay. Verbal de-escalation can also encompass things like, let's do the, are you looking at my girlfriend kind of situation?
Excuse me, mate. I don't know what you're doing. Honestly, my girlfriend's sat there. You're staring at her all night. What are you playing at?
Oh, I'm really sorry, mate.
What do you mean you're really sorry?
No,
Sorry. Come on.
Tell me, she just reminds me of someone I know. Did she go to Wixford Grammar in the 1990s? Was she in Mrs. Cooper's English class, do you know?
I don't know, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm probably mistaken, I'm really sorry.
Right.
Yeah,
So
all right.
just stay away next time.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Excuse me, you look at my partner.
Oh,
No,
I'm-
it's honestly, you've been
I'm
staring at her
really
all night, mate. It's bang out of order.
She looks like my sister, and she reminds me so much of my sister. She sadly died of cancer last week. I can't help it.
I'm sorry, mate. No.
It's all right. It's
Let me get you through.
It's still a bit cruel. Of course, my sister didn't die from cancer last week, but he doesn't know that, okay? And what that does is that takes the wind out of his sails right away, right? Because if he was to carry on, he would look like a right idiot, okay? Right. Another good one is the, I should just say, you didn't stay on that horse.
You're looking at me, mate.
Yeah,
Hey, Cole, what's your problem?
just tell me where you got that shirt from. It looks really great on you. Is it from Next?
Amber.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Yeah, it's fine. Right. But you have to rehearse these scenarios. You have to practice so that it becomes second nature. Now, these aren't guaranteed to work in all situations. They're just examples of the kind of thing that you can do. Certainly when people are under the influence of drink or drugs, their ability to think rationally is severely compromised. So, you know, there's a great saying, I think Ian Abernethy, an instructor we train with who lives up in Cumbria, said, you cannot reason with the unreasonable. Okay, right, so it's another factor you have to take into consideration.
One of the things that I find as well is the best people to do these kind of de-escalation drills with are people that are good actors.
Yeah.
Because I was mentioning to a couple of people in the break, I do de-escalation stuff with a group of girls, secondary school age. It's the hardest session I teach every week because you're trying to get them to act like, oh, I'm really angry with you, and then kind of go, oh, stop it. And you just can't get them to get to that level where they're actually feeling like they need to use the de-escalation. So it's very difficult to teach, it's very difficult to do.
Right. Next tool in your toolbox is distraction. I'm not talking about the, look, there's a badger over there. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the kind of thing where if Jack was to walk up and say, give me your wallet.
Hey, give me your wallet, come on.
Yeah, sure, mate, there it is. And I throw it over there, right? If he really wants my wallet, if that's what his true intent is, he's got to make a decision. Now, the minute he goes over there, that buys me precious time in which I can make my escape, okay? There are examples of people who have found themselves in similar situations where they've been mugged for their mobile phone. One guy, he was in London, he was on his way home on his way back to his hotel after a gig, and a guy said, and he was just checking some directions on his phone. A guy came up to him and said, give me your phone, mate, and he had a knife. And he just threw his phone over the bridge into the water. And the guy was, well, where'd you go with that? It's like, you know, he suddenly took away his motivation for doing what it was that he set out to do. Again, not guaranteed to win, my God. Oh, bastard, right, I was going to stab you anyway. But, you know, these kind of things as well. Yeah, environmental distraction, that could be, you know, I just find something to hand, anything I can use as an improvised weapon, you know, pick up a shoe, throw a chair, anything I can use to defend myself, like get back, you know, particularly if he's got a weapon and I haven't. The other thing as well is, as humans, there are certain things, and this is universal across all cultures, certain things that we find disgusting. Right? They are spitting, urinating, defecation, and vomit, and blood as well. But it's a little bit difficult to bleed on demand. It's also a little bit difficult to vomit on demand. But If Jack was to attack me and I was to make out that I was urgently in need of the toilet, that might be enough for him to say, this mate, right, sorry mate, yeah, just go, because I don't want to have to deal with whatever mess is about to happen here. Okay. Has anyone heard of the magician's Penn and Teller? No, Penn and Teller. A couple of American magicians were famous, probably. They're still performing, but were probably at their peak about sort of 10, 15 years ago, performing in Las Vegas and places like that. They were doing a show in London, and the one guy had gone out of his hotel to get some food. He'd been to a fast food place, and he had a milkshake in his hand. And as he was on his way back to his hotel, he was approached by someone who tried to mug him for his wallet. And all he simply did was pour the milkshake over himself. Like, yeah, you want it? Right, come and get it. You know, that was enough to put the guy off and make him go and find somebody else. Leave him alone. Right.
Can you just also make yourself a bit mental?
Yes. Yeah.
That's quite good.
Claire and I know somebody who is an ex-police officer, and she said that when they were doing their police training, you can pretend to be stupid, not understand. If you know a few words of foreign language, respond in a foreign language, make out you haven't understood what they've said, like blah, 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 you know, just talk gibberish, or pretend to be in aeroplanes, like, you know. People don't know how to cope with weirdness, right? It's true, right? Thank you. So, if all of that doesn't work, what can you do? All right. So, in the world of self-protection, this is the command center, right? This is like the hard drive. If I can find a way of switching this off, I don't need to worry about what's happening anywhere else, okay? So, a short, sharp jab to the throat, this way, or a punch is going to really hurt, and it's going to stop Jack in his tracks. Hand under the chin, push his neck as far back. If he's got hold of me, if I slip my hand up under the middle, do that, he has got to let go, especially if I then start to dig my fingers into his eyes, right? Because he'll want to get my hand away from there. And of course the groin, so good old knee to the mattress. Right, nose. On the bridge of the nose, up with the palm of the hand there. Basically, your nose is bone only to about halfway down, and the rest is cartilage, which is pretty soft. So a decent strike is going to smash Jack's nose all over his face. And as you know, if you've ever had any injury to the face, they bleed like anything, right? And when I was hit in the face with a golf club when I was about 15, when one of my friends got into golf, and we went down to the local school playing fields, and we were standing there, and he went, I was with another guy, he went, don't stand there because you're right in the way of the golf club, it's going to hit you as it comes over the shoulder. Actually, if I'd stayed where I was, I'd have been fine. So I went round the other side, right into the danger zone, and it just, as the golf club swung over his shoulder, it just caught me a glancing blow on the nose. I fell to the floor, but just because I was momentarily stunned and I didn't really know what happened. But I got up, and I was fine, a little bit dazed. My friend said, got a bit of a cut on your nose, James. And I'm like, oh, okay. I put my hand to my nose, took it away, and my hand was red. And at that moment, I was a mess. I was like, I just, in my mind's eye, I imagined that my nose was sort of splattered across my face. It was the tiniest cut you would not believe, but it just bled like anything. So, ears. Grab, pull. Remember in the old days when teachers used to grab you by the ear and pull you along? Bite, ah. Scream, ah. Slap. Burst his eardrum if need be, right? Cut your hand, boom. Right? Very painful. Anywhere on the face, There's loads of lovely soft tissue here. Ladies, if you've got long fingernails, scratch, you can get into these, it's called fish hook technique. You can get a finger inside and yank. But I know, I can see you wincing, but believe me, this might save your life one day. Nostrils as well. Oh, I know. Also, the neck, right? So here, lots of nerves, lots of blood vessels. Get a knock there. It's very disorientating and it really knocks you for six.
Yeah.
Knees, feet and shins. So our knees are amazing pieces of biomechanical engineering, but they suffer from one big limitation, and that is that they only move in one direction. So a kick there, or a kick on the inside there. Many a football career has been ruined because of awkward twists in the knee. The cruciate ligament goes, it's career-ending injury, even despite advances in modern surgery. Feet, ladies, if you've got stiletto heels, most people walk around in trainers these days or casual shoes, and it's very rare that you find men wear formal shoes these days. Sharp stiletto heel, forceful down on the instep as hard as you can. It's going to be extremely painful. If you've got a leather shoe that's got hard sole on the shin bone, scrape down. There's a good chance you'll take the skin off. Yeah. I know. It's all very gruesome and all very nasty. But these are your kind of go-to target. However, having said that, we come back to this question of all of this has to be weighed up within this legal and ethical framework. Okay. So there is, at least in England and Wales, and probably in Scotland too, there is no definition of what reasonable force means, because what is reasonable in one situation will be completely different in another situation. Right? All I will say is that, and I apologise that there's no sound on this, but you'll get the gist of it anyway. But, you might remember this. So this is Adrian Edmondson and Rick Mail in their TV show Bottom from the early 1990s, and they've had a visit from the gas man, and they've been stealing gas from the next door neighbour. So you just have to imagine in your head that boing, 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 and the thwack. Right? And he comes in again. Boing, boing, boing. Right. one for good measure, right. Now. And then they're like, no. And now they're worried that they've actually killed him. Right. Now, that was obviously done for comedic effect, but make no mistake, if I did that to somebody in real life, I'm going to jail. Right. Whether I acted in self-defense, whether I'm the victim or not, doesn't matter. Okay. So, next concept is preemptive strikes versus retaliation. Now, this is an area where there's a great deal of confusion in the world of martial arts. So, the founder of my style, Shotokan, Gichin Funakoshi, died in 1957, wrote in an early textbook of his, "There is no first attack in karate." And this has been widely misinterpreted to mean that in any given confrontational situation, I should wait for the other guy to attack first before I retaliate. Problem with that is if he hits me first and I go down, what good is that? Right? I don't get a chance to use my technique. So concerned was Funakoshi about this that he actually wrote later on a clarification. He said, what I mean by that is that I should not be the instigator of the situation.
Yeah.
However, if I am put in a situation where I genuinely believe, through Jack's behaviour and through his actions, that an attack is imminent, the law, at least in the UK, does allow for me to hit him first, right? Especially if I see him clench his fists, grit his teeth, furrow his eyebrows, especially if he grabs hold of me and does this kind of thing, or this kind of thing, right? I need to deal with it before he can do whatever it is he's planned to do on me, right? In fact, if Jack is shouting at me and he's threatening to do all kinds of nasty things to me, he's threatening to kill me, or my loved ones, or my family, and I genuinely believe he intends to carry that out, he has already committed an assault, by the way. Okay? I also have to be aware as to how my actions will look to anybody who observes the event. Okay? So, let's have a look at the difference between two scenarios. Right, so we're scrapping, blah, blah, blah. I hit you, you fall to the floor, stay down! That's scenario number one. Scenario number two. Back off! Back off! Help! Help! Call the police! Who was the victim in either of those situations? Remember that these days as well, everyone's got one of these. What's the first thing people do when something kicks off? Film it. Exactly.
And they don't always show the whole lot, which can give you a completely wrong.
There's a really good story I heard about this regarding a gentleman that got into an altercation. He was knocked to the floor, ended up actually getting into a good position, was sat on top of the other guy, and he was like trying to sort out the situation. The bystander, just some random guy, didn't have nothing to do with the situation, not even friends with the guy on the floor, didn't know either of them, saw a man sat on top of another man in the street, and went, this don't look right. Came over, bang, kicked him straight in the head, killed him. And this guy had nothing to do with anything that was going on. And it just goes to show that, like what James is on about, considering bystanders, witness perception of what you're doing and how you're defending yourself is so, so important. Because if you don't consider it, you might end up with the victim of another assault or something else that happens.
It's also about being a responsible victim, in inverted commas. So what does that mean? That means, just as I exactly demonstrated in the second scenario there, it's about deal with the threat using the minimum amount of force as necessary. If he's on the ground, wait, make sure he's okay. And might, for good measure, give him a stamp on the ankle, which is going to limit his ability to get up and give chase. Or heel into the thigh, give him a bit of a dead leg, same reason, right? And then it's about, right, call the police. If he's hurt, call an ambulance, record things using the memo function on my phone while it's still fresh in my mind. It's about doing all those kinds of things, okay? So, just by way of recap. Avoidance is better than reaction. Always, always, always. Right. Do what you can to avoid getting into situations where you might have to do this kind of thing. I'll give you an example. Some years ago, way before we were married, I was out with a group of friends in Birmingham on Broad Street. I think we were in the Walkabout Bar. There was a big football match being broadcast on the TV screens. There was a group of lads. They were getting very excited about the football game, and they were getting a bit. Everyone know what the word Larry means? Like, you know, they were just getting a bit overexcited, a bit boisterous. They kept bumping into people. They were singing, just being generally a bit loud. And a couple of times, bar staff would come over, tell them to keep it down, you know, they're upsetting other customers. And they'd be quiet for a few minutes, but then it sort of ramped up again. Now, me and my friends just I can't remember which of us said it first, but one of them just sort of said, it's getting a bit noisy in here. Should we just go somewhere else for a few minutes where it's a bit quieter? We can have a chat, you know, enjoy ourselves and not worry about what these guys might do. And then on the way back past the pub, police cars, vans, broken window. Clearly, in the time that we'd been away, something had happened, and I have no doubt that it involved this group of lads. Whether someone just got fed up with them in the end and decided to teach them a lesson or what. But, so again, there's a lot you can do by adopting a confident posture, right? Look at the difference between Jack comes up to me, or fire go. Know when the odds are stacked against you. So, what does that mean? If there's more of them than there are of me, get out of there. If there's one of him and he's got a weapon and I haven't, get out of there, okay? Or at least if I can't do that, try and find a way to even the odds. So if I've got a friend and there's two of him, or sorry, two of them, I might like, well, you take that guy, I'll take him, or whatever. Or I might use, like say, look to whatever is available in my environment to try and, you know, limit whatever it is that you can do with the weapon that he's got to hand. Use your environment and set off a fire alarm, set off a fire extinguisher, anything to create a commotion that will get people's attention, because criminals don't like it when other people can see what they're doing. Okay?
We've always been taught to say shout fire. Shout
Yeah.
fire rather than help or anything like that. Shout fire because it's the one thing that people will always
Respond to. Yeah, that's brilliant.
We do an interesting one with kids. So it's a good example based on what you were saying. Is that when you have look at child abduction and stuff like that, and there's a kid screaming, and they're taken away. 90% of people just look at that. What a naughty kid! What an awful child! And they're literally being abducted by a random person, but because the child's not giving clear verbals, they have no idea what's going on. So one of the things that we do as an example would be like, if a child's being taken away, is you make eye contact with somebody specifically. Help me! They're taking me away! Help me! Please help me! It's not my dad, he's not my mum. Because automatically you're pulling somebody else into this situation with you. You're not just kind of going, help, because somebody might not come. Because there's a great rule that we look at, Jamie Clubb talks about this, called the 10-80-10 rule. And 10% of people will panic and not know anything, and they'll just run around like a headless chicken. 80% of people will wait for instructions from somebody else, and 10% of people will actually be proactive and actually start saying, this is what you need to do, call the ambulance, you need to do this. And you need to ideally be the kind of people that are going to be in that top 10% of actually being proactive and doing something and not waiting for other people to tell you what to do. Anyway, sorry.
That's good. Right, so, survival versus victory, right? So my aim is deal with the threat, get out and escape safely and cause the minimum of harm to my attacker. It is not about winning, okay? It's not about pummeling him until he is unrecognisable, okay, right? Bare minimum, if I stun him and he stumbles back, that might be enough. He might go, I picked on the wrong guy tonight, and that's it. He just goes, right, okay, sorry mate, and off he goes. To me, that is the best outcome possible. If that doesn't work, well, our kata teaches us that, we have, it's almost like a sequence of what-if scenarios. So if he comes back, I might have to employ different strategies. But ultimately, at some point, I want him to go down and he's no longer a threat to me. And at that point, I'm out there, okay? There is, sadly, no magic formula. All of this advice is great, and I would urge you to, take it on board. But be aware that what works in one set of circumstances is not guaranteed to work in another. But again, through the type of training that Jack and I do, we build up this repertoire of techniques, this, if you like, this sort of martial arts toolbox that we're prepared for whatever happens. That's our ultimate goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Key thing to remember is don't let them get hold. If Jack sees my hand coming in, slap it out of the way. If I come in with both hands, because if I can get hold of him, guess what's coming next? And very important principle, try and stay on your feet if you can, because if you do end up on the ground, you're going to be extremely vulnerable. Best thing you can do is probably curl up into a tight ball, protect your head, because you want to avoid this kind of thing. And you'll notice that Jack is covering his head this way, not this way. Reason for that is because muscle and bone on this side, tendons, ligaments, blood vessels on this side. If these get damaged, you'll spend months in the QE hospital with lots of expensive and hurtful surgery. This way, yeah, you'll get bruised, you might get a broken bone, but you'll recover. If you can, try and get back on your feet as quickly as you can. And remember that the aftermath, that what happens after the confrontation, is almost as important as everything that goes before, particularly when it comes to how witnesses perceive what just happened. So, true martial arts, karate in particular, should be grounded in reality. It's not about fancy spinning kicks, it's not about the kind of stuff that you see in movies and on TV. In a real life situation, you've got very little time to react and deal with it. There is no time for theatrics or wondering about how what you do looks to other people. A strike to the throat, attack to the eyes, an attack to the groin will stop him in his tracks, almost guaranteed. And if that's the case, great. I need to back away and I'm out of there. So, I've always said that the reason why I'm so passionate about martial arts is that if ever I find myself in some position of influence within government, for example, I would make martial arts a compulsory part of the school curriculum, because I think they teach a lot of good behaviours, respect, discipline, as well as the physical fitness aspects of it. But if you are taking up martial arts for self-defence purposes, be aware that the majority of stuff that's out there does not really prepare you for that, for the reasons that we looked at earlier. And no single martial art has all the answers. We try and cover all the bases, but if you want to learn how to throw, go to a judo class. If you want to learn grappling or how to fight on the ground, BJJ is, they're the experts at that kind of stuff. We are predominantly strikers and kickers.
Yeah. When we look at like traditional karate, though, how it would have been originally practiced.
Yeah.
Karate
It would have had all of those.
It would have had all those things. It was more of a holistic style. You'd have had a little bit of everything, but it's kind of like master of all trades.
Fragmented, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. So we're good at kind of everything, but like James said, if you want to focus on certain things, that's why we have things like taekwondo for you want to get good at kicking people in the head. You want to do all that other stuff. But in my experience, in terms of a self-protection art, something that's more holistic, that has a little bit of everything, generally is more effective overall, because you can kind of have the experiences of what if somebody's trying to grab me and throw me, what if somebody's trying to hit me in the head, what if somebody's kicking me and being nasty. You've got all of those different disciplines in there.
And don't neglect the non-physical aspects of self-protection, so all that awareness and de-escalation stuff that we talked about earlier. If you do find yourself in a situation where you have to fight, whether it's to, like Jack's standing there and he's in the way of my exit, I've got to do something, hit him, move him out of the way in order to get out. Okay? Primary targets, as I say, throat, face, eyes, groin. Now, You might go home this evening and think, bloody hell, you know. Seriously, I don't want anyone in this room to go home alarmed or afraid or anything like that. That's the very least of what I set out to achieve with this talk this evening. Despite what you hear in the news or see in the papers, the headlines, being a victim of physical violence is statistically unlikely, okay? If it has happened to you, you've just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's just bad luck, that's all it is. Right? And you certainly shouldn't blame yourself for if that has happened to you. Right? Certainly in a rural area like ours, Wixford, Evesham, Worcestershire, we're highly unlikely to encounter this kind of thing unless you go into town centres on a Friday and Saturday night. Generally, areas of high social deprivation, inner city areas are where a lot of this kind of stuff happens. Unfortunately, a lot of it these days is drug related. A lot of crime is committed so that people have the money to fund their drug habits. If you are male, you are statistically more likely to be involved in violence than if you are female. That list of the habitual acts of violence, so the types of things that you encounter in real life, that is based on male versus male violence, which tends to happen face to face. It looks very different when it's female versus female. Women will scratch, pull hair, use shoes, handbags to compensate for the lack of size and strength that they have. It also looks very different, I'm sorry to say, when it's male versus female. And it is sad and sobering to note that the vast majority of violence that is committed against women is by somebody they know, typically a current or former partner. I haven't had time this evening to go into that side of things, some of the special considerations that women have to think about when they're going about their day-to-day lives, but Jack is training to be a self-defense instructor and has run a women's self-protection course previously. And if enough of you here would like us to come back and do that here in the Village Hall, then by all means, before you go this evening, put your name down on the piece of paper there, and we'll look to arrange a date and we'll probably do that. How many would you need to do that, Ben?
Honestly, I care more about the fact that it gets spread out and
Yes.
people. But basically, I ran one in June. There was a hell of a lot of interest. It was just the fact that it was in June and I put it on a really silly weekend, and it was on a weekend, it was like a bank holiday weekend or something like that, and it didn't get that many people. However, I genuinely had 30 people that said, wish we could have been there. And after we finished it, I mentioned to a couple of people in the break, we found that there was a lot of things that we talked about that they didn't even really consider. It's just through not being told about this stuff and not being educated in this stuff. And some of the biggest ones for me, as an example, some of the things we might go over is it's not just the physical skills too. It's the build up to violence. It's understanding the difference between male and female violence, and what, first of all, types of perpetrators women are more likely to experience, but also the
kind of red flags.
The kind of red flags and the things that they can identify early on in relationships. That's not even just not like a. I was going to say you and me were together. Secret.
What goes on in the dungeon?
Yeah, what stays in the dungeon. But as in friendships, there's something that we talk about a lot is what we call insidious violence, or insidious assault.
It's like that coercive control stuff.
And it's coercive control, and it's escalation over time, and that's what women are more likely to experience than men. The violence that men will see is just straight up, here it goes, bang! Whereas women, it's more likely to happen over a longer period of time, and it's harder to identify those early warning signs. But hopefully, if you decide to come along, you have an idea. Anyway.
Yeah. And just to wrap this up, certainly younger adults under the age of 30 are you're more at risk than older people. We generally get a little bit more sensible as we get older. We become more aware of the limitations of our own bodies, and certainly I'm very aware when I come back from training with Jack on a Thursday that my body doesn't heal quite the same as it did when I was back in my 20s. And the odds are significantly increased when drink and drugs are involved because it just impairs people's ability to think rationally. All self-control goes out the window in those types of situations. So if you can avoid those, you are some way towards not being a victim of violence.
Do you find that people under the influence of drugs are more aggressive, more violence likely than people under the influence of alcohol?
Right, so Claire's question was, do you find that people under the influence of drugs are more aggressive than those who are under the influence of alcohol? I would say it depends on the drug.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
I mean, some people who are on like amphetamines may not feel any pain at all if you hit them.
Yes.
They'll just be completely oblivious to it. Whereas like things like heroin tend to have a kind of like a soporific effect, like maybe sleepy. So, yes, sir.
Just personal experience. For 30 years in the Westminster Police, I had very few problems with people with drugs.
Yeah.
But my God, you know, a lot of problems with people with alcohol.
With alcohol.
I can imagine.
Yeah. In fact, I think when the licensing laws were changed in the UK back in, was it 97 in the Blair government, by extending the licensing laws, I think what the government was hoping to achieve by that was that overnight Britain would become some kind of Parisian cafe society where people would be sitting outside at tables on the pavement enjoying the red wine and the Je t'aime cigarette, like, whilst listening to some, jazz being played down the road. I think most of them would probably agree all that's happened is people just carry on drinking exactly the same as they did before. Right. So yes. So if you like what we've had, what you've seen this evening, if you like what we've had to say, and you are interested in either us coming back to do either a beginner's karate lesson where we can go into some of this stuff in a bit more detail, and please don't let age or anything, don't think that you can't do. You absolutely can. I personally know of instructors who are well into their 70s, and I would not mess with those guys. They would rip your head off and not even think about it. As I was saying to somebody in the break, a recent study in the Harvard Medical Journal has shown that actually martial arts is one of the things that you can continue to do well into old age and helps to prevent cognitive decline because it combines physical movement with concentration, that whole mindfulness stuff that I was talking about earlier, and the social aspect as well. You're not on your own, you're training with a group of people. So yes, and if you want to find out if you've got kids in your family, grandkids, and you think that they might be interested in this kind of stuff, there's some leaflets about Cotswold Karate. So just to recap, Mondays in Chipping Camden School, it's about 20 minutes by car from here. Loughborough is where?
Quite a long way. It's probably about 35 minutes. But
the class in Evesham on a Thursday is at Evesham Country Park in the what's it called? The
Fundamental Movement Academy.
Yeah. So,
which is a gymnastics gym.
If you know Evesham Country Park in the car park, you go past where the garden rooms are, and it's just sort of when you're right there on the top floor.
Is that in the day?
They're evening classes.
Yeah.
And yes. Thank you very much for your attention. And thank you
Thank both of them because it's a fascinating talk, and obviously black belts, they're really experienced and knowledgeable, and I have to say passionate about the whole subject.
That we are.
Yeah, and it's obviously doing it for a while, but interesting to hear all the karate moves, and I'm disappointed you can't take it up and become a Jason Bourne. But good you moved on to self-defence, because that's something which is in everyone's mindset and so on, and all the grisly details about where.
I'm sorry I had to talk about that.
No, it's good, and I think it's encouraging because it's. Hopefully, many of us are fortunate and enough never had to be in that position.
All I'll say is, much as though you may sit there and think that you couldn't possibly do that to another person, if your life is threatened, or if it came down to it, you will do it.
Yes.
You will.
No, right. Just thank you, and the abiding memory is if I ever get mugged, I just pretend to be an eel. I just pretend to be an eel. Thank you very much. Thank you.